Hello, everyone. My name is Carolina Caballero. We have some people that are in the class. I am a professor in the at Tulane University in Department of Spanish and Portuguese and Latin American Studies. And I'd like to welcome you to our speaker series, where we are, and this is in conjunction with my Introduction to Latinx Studies class, where we are highlighting members of the local Latinx community, the New Orleans Latinx community. And today we have with us Brenda Melara, who is born and bred here in New Orleans. And she's also, among other things, very involved with the media here in New Orleans, has been her entire life. And she is editor-in-chief of Que Pasa newspaper, which is, if you look on the screen, I shared a screen, so you guys could look at like kind of the digital copy. So this is going to be very informal. I'm going to let Brenda just introduce herself, talk a little bit about her background here, the community, and her work with media, and then we're going to open it up to questions in just a few minutes. And in the meanwhile, if you have a question, if you want to put it in the chat box, you're more welcome to do so. Okay, Brenda, please go ahead.
Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you, Carolina, for inviting me to your series. I'm very excited to be here this evening, sharing my story with you guys and letting you in a little on what is going on here in the Latino community, Latinx community here in New Orleans. It's a new label that we're getting used to. I think a lot of people are still not used to using Latinx, but you know, it's part of our language now and our media lingo. So we're trying to use it as much as possible. But anyway, if you still hear me saying Latino community for some reason, just excuse me, because I've been using that word for forever. But yes, as Carolina said, I was born here in New Orleans. My parents actually are both from Guatemala in Central America. And it's a funny story because they actually both were passing through New Orleans, just happened to be from the same area, but they didn't know each other, and they were passing through New Orleans. And one evening they went out, each with their group of friends, and they met, and the rest is history. They never left. They fell in love, married, and stayed in New Orleans. And this was back then, back in the late 60s, when it was a little easier to decide, hey, I like New Orleans, or I like any other city in the United States. I'm going to apply for my green card, and they were able to get it pretty much, a month after they applied for it. So they really, really liked the city. They stayed, and so they're still here, and they just got married. I was born, and my story begins where a lot of people ask me what kind of, how was it growing up at home and living in the United States? So I was born I was brought up in a bilingual home. My first language was actually Spanish. And then when I went to school, I learned English. I was also brought up biculturally, meaning that I was brought up with the traditions and the customs and the language of their home, which is Guatemala. But living in the United States, of course, you assimilate very quickly, and you adapt to the customs and the traditions of the place that you're living at. So it's all I've known. I cannot, there's a perfect balance there with the Latino culture and the American culture. So I like to say that I like my frijoles negros, my black beans, but I also love my red beans. And that's where that went. That's where the language also, I speak both Spanish and English, and what we also call Spanglish, where I'll start in one language and end in a different one. And a lot of my friends also do the same thing, and it's something we don't even think about. So that's something unique to a lot of people, but it's not unique to us. It's just something natural that comes to us. So I started getting interested in media at a very, very young age, because my mother was actually already working in media, Latino media here in New Orleans. She was working as a contributor to one of the first Latin radio stations, which at the time, and it's still in existence, it's KGLA. At the time it was Radio Mil. And as a child, she would bring me to work when she had to do her shows or produce something. So I got very interested in the media at a very young age. By the time I was 15, that was the wave of the young boy bands. And you might have heard of like Menudo, which was a very popular Puerto Rican band, which Ricky Martin, if that's familiar to you, if he's, you know, if you're familiar with him, he was part of that band back in the 80s and 90s. And so when I was a teenager, what happened was they invited me to become part of a show that the radio station was starting up to get the young people interested in listening to Latino radio. So I was the voice of the radio spots that they recorded to get young people to listen to an after school program at 3 p.m. I remember every afternoon, where they would play all this type of music and get people to call in and request and you know, be part of a 1 hour long show every afternoon. And then of course, I was around 15, 16 years old at the time. And I was like, this is what I want to do. You know, when I get to college, this is what I want to study. And this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. So I went to school. I graduated from high school and went on to UNO and got my degree in drama and communications, always wanting to go back and work in the Latino media. I was interested in English media, of course, but I just felt that my fit was more with Latino media because that's what I grew up with. And I wanted to be part of something at the time that was going through an interesting transition. So this was like early 90s when you were starting to listen to, because I'm very into the music scene too, the art scene. So it was a very interesting time when you were starting to see the music crossovers. For example, Julio Iglesias, Gloria Estefan with Miami Sound Machine. You were starting to hear them crossing over. And I said, okay, this is going to eventually become something bigger. And this is my chance to contribute with Latino media and the music and all that. And of course, it did transition over. And I continue to work in Latino media here in New Orleans. Now, my degree was in drama and communications, but of course, this market in New Orleans is very, very small compared to the Latino markets in Miami, Dallas, LA, New York, Chicago. So you really, if you wanted to have a career, this was not the place for it. Okay, so my contributions to Latino media has always been on a freelance basis. I've always had another job that paid the bills, but I never let it go because I always enjoyed working in Latino media. So I was balancing that too, having a career. I actually started working for the Jefferson Parish school system in the ESL department, and while doing my Latino media. So as time went on, not only was I working in the media, but I was also seeing the changes through the school system of the Hispanic population in the metro area. Okay, so we're fast forwarding a little bit here. I saw the changes. They weren't as strong until up in, I would say, like 2006. Because remember, in 2005 we had Hurricane Katrina. Okay, so in 2006, when people were starting to return to New Orleans and the wave of Latino workers were moving into the area, that's when it really, really exploded. I have some little facts here right now. Let's see, presently in July of 2019, the estimate of the Hispanic population in the metro area was about 115,000 people, okay? So of course, we can't use this number as the number because, as we all know, not everyone likes to say, that they live here, especially, depending on their status, immigration status. So that's just the number that we would work with. But back in 2020, it was only half of this number of people. Okay, so in 20 years, we've pretty much doubled our population in the metro area. But back in 2005, just to give you an example, the Latino community has always been around in New Orleans, obviously, but with Hurricane Katrina, when the Latinos workers moved into the area and decided to settle in New Orleans and not go back and where they had come from, a lot of them moved in from Texas. They were working in Texas, they were living in Texas, but they stayed. So to give you an idea, we were registered, because I was working in ESL, remember that, the English as a Second Language department for Jefferson Parish, we were registering at least 20 families a day, okay? New families that were moving into the area and registering their children to go to school. About 5 years later, I would say 4 to 5 years later, when we were working the pre-K program, when 4-year-olds are registered to go to school, our classes, our entire group of people that had registered for that year, 60% of the children were Latinos, okay? And this was in 2009, 2010. And from then on, every year, the registration process has been about the same. So every year you're registering about 60% of Latino children into the school system. So if you go and look at the Jefferson Parish Public Schools system website, and you look at the makeup of the children, you'd be very surprised at the amount of Hispanic children that are registered in the school system, which lets me know that the face of the Jefferson Parish young person is also changing, the family, the makeup of it. So, so translating that to media, that tells me also that there are a lot more families that live here, that there's a need for the Latino media, whether it's television, radio, and print media, and that whether it's in Spanish or in our format, which is bilingual, the need is there, and there's also a market for it when you're looking at it from the business side. You have to remember that Latino buyers are very, very loyal. Once you market to them and you give them what they expect you to give them, they stay with you and they're loyal and they come back. So the buying power when it comes to the Latino population, it's very, very strong. And there's billions of dollars to be made, not just obviously here, but nationally. So anybody that's interested in marketing to the Latino community, you should, because there is money to be spent and they'll be buying. There's a buying power there. So, so as you can see, in New Orleans, the Latino community has grown. It grew exponentially right after Katrina. The question I always get to is, what is the makeup of the Latino community here? And I have some stats too about that. The largest community group is, the Honduran community. They're about 29%. And after that is the Mexican community, which is about 20%. And the rest would be made up of Central American, and then people from the Caribbean, which would be Cubans, Dominicans, Puerto Ricans, but that's pretty much the makeup here in New Orleans, which hasn't changed much except for the Mexican population. They had actually gone down right before Katrina, so much so that the Mexican consulate had shut down and had gone back to to Texas, because it just didn't, it was just an expense for them to be here when they didn't have much movement. So before Katrina, the Mexican consulate had shut down and gone back to Houston. I mean, anybody that needed anything, paperwork or anything, had to go to Houston to, that jurisdiction to get their paperwork done. But after Katrina, they came back. They had to reopen their consulate here in the New Orleans area because they just had such a need for it that actually President Bush at the time came down and helped inaugurate the consulate in which is still where it initially started, which is about the convention center. So so that says a lot, that the Mexican community just exploded, and it's, you know, it's still growing here in the area. So I always said that I was very, very proud of my roots. It's the essence of who I am. I'm a Latina of the first generation Hispanic American. And, you know, I could never turn my back on my heritage, that I was always going to show it off somehow, whether it was, you know, through my work or through my freelance and media, or just speaking about it. But at the same time, I consider myself a NOLA girl. I always say that because I was born and raised here. I love New Orleans. I mean, we're so lucky to live in such a diverse and interesting, unique, beautiful city. And so, you know, I have that balance, and that's why I reflect what I feel through my work. And, you know, I've always enjoyed speaking about it, because I just think that if you're not proud of the essence of who you are, then who are you really, you know? So I thank my parents for always telling me that the importance of speaking two languages or more languages, of being bilingual, not losing the languages, because it just opens up your world to other ideas and other cultures and other perspectives and other ways of seeing things. And now I've done the same with my children. I've taught them the language. They are not as fully bilingual as I'd like them to be, but they're still coming around and trying to see the importance of it. But of course, I've raised them with the culture, with the traditions, with the food, and I've seen that perfect balance in them too, where they just don't even think about it. It's just natural for them to switch over from one culture to the other and not even, you know, bat an eye about it. So pretty much that's my story. I started working with the newspaper. I'll backtrack a little bit. After college, I started working for a radio station, another radio station, Radio Monumental, which was like one of the second radio station here in Spanish-speaking station here in the area, which now is part of KGLA, Radio Tropical, which is, I think it's Latino Mix or La Fabulosa, one of those. But anyway, I started working with them. Then I transitioned over to print media. I started working for La Prensa as a contributing writer. And then when Katrina hit, La Prensa was sold and the new owner decided not to bring it back. So Juan Carlos Ramos, he created El Tiempo, New Orleans, and called me and asked me if I'd be interested in being his editor. So I jumped on board with this opportunity and started with El Tiempo in 2006. In 2010, I met Javier Olondo, who has Que Pasa New Orleans, a television show. And I got together with him as media partners. I would be the print and he would be the TV portion, and together we would promote each other. So as we worked together, we realized that there were other opportunities out there. And so eventually, about 3 years later, I left El Tiempo after being with them for about 8 years and stayed on with Que Pasa New Orleans. This was in 2010. And then we started working on the show, TV show. And then 3 years ago, he asked me what I thought about creating a newspaper to complement the show. And I was so excited about that because this is my forte. So I said, yes, let's create a newspaper that is all about art, culture, and entertainment, because we already have other Latino papers that focus on the news and on sports, but we didn't have something like this. And this was born in September 2017, what you're seeing now. So all of our articles are in Spanish and in English. And we did that on purpose. We did that because I felt that if you were to bring the paper home in a Latino home, this paper could be read by a couple of generations. It could be read by grandma, who would only possibly read Spanish. It could be read by mom, who would probably switch between Spanish and English, and probably if the child, the third generation, would probably just enjoy reading the English part of it, because that would be eventually their dominant language. So that's why they would read it in English. But I've gotten a lot of compliments on it, and I have even, you know, a lot of teachers use it in their classroom to teach Spanish, and because their students enjoy the articles and can read both versions of it. And we just focus, it's a monthly publication. It's a free publication that you could probably find at a coffee shop near you or a Latino business. And it focuses on art, culture, and entertainment here in New Orleans. And of course, it's available digitally too, if you just don't feel like picking up a copy, or you just don't have time, or you just want to, you know, go and look at the back copy, you know, the back issues too. This is my 32nd issue that I've created in 3 years. So we're excited about that.
That's so, that is great. Brenda, a question, I like the fact that it's bilingual, I think is really interesting. Are the articles first written in English or in Spanish?
Okay.
And as a Spanish teacher, I'm interested in that.
Okay, my contributing writers, one is English speaking only. So obviously she sends me her article in English and I translate it. My other one, she does more of a listing of the different events. So of course, everything's in English. And then I write a lot of the articles, and my dominant language is English. So I write them in English first, and then I translate them.
Right.
And then Javier is my proofer.
Right. Javier, absolutely. Absolutely.
He's my proofer.
And if you guys, I don't know if you guys, Javier Alonso, he also teaches at Tulane University, teaches classical Spanish guitar.
Yes.
Right. He's of Cuban descent, but lived in Spain, and is
on
our campus. He's all over the place. Actually, you're absolutely right. He's all over the place.
Well, he lived in Austria. He lived in Cuba. He lived in Spain. So he's phenomenal when it comes to talking about all the different places he's been. Right. You know, he's lived in.
Any questions for Brenda?
Come on, I know y'all have them.
Brenda, what is your readership? Like, how has it been going? Like, because I think it's also interesting that you've dedicated this to culture, right? Art and culture. So what is the readership, do you think? And how do you gauge that actually? But
we print 5,000 issues a month. Okay. And then we estimate, like, if 2 people were to read the paper, you know, that's about 10,000 people if everyone picked up a copy. So that's where it's hard to gauge it, you know, because the only ways we can really assume that it's been read is because when we go back the following month to put the new issue out, if the stand is empty, we realize, okay, someone took them all. You know, and so that helps us gauge too. What our advertisers sometimes do also is they'll put a little coupon on, you know, on their ad. And if someone walks in, you know, the restaurant or whatever it is, the business with the coupon, then they report that to us. So we understand that their marketing is working and their marketing strategy, but then that gives us an idea. Okay, yeah, people are picking up the paper because they are, you know, bringing this coupon to the place of business that is offering it. And then it's just, you know, we'll get emails on our website about certain articles. And then, you know, people will find us or call us or text us and say, hey, we really enjoyed this article. And we're also on, we're very strong on social media. So if you find us on Facebook, people also will, you know, comment on something or post something about the articles or the paper. So on Facebook, you can find us at Que Pasa New Orleans, Que Pasa newspaper.
Yeah, Sophie just asked that question. I don't know if you saw it. She just asked the questions about social media.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So you just answered it, but how about Instagram or Twitter or any of that, or not yet?
Yes, we are on Instagram at Que Pasa New Orleans, Instagram. And on Twitter, it's Que Pasa NOLA.
Okay. Okay, great.
Yep.
And anybody else have a question? I have a question about the Que Pasa festival that you guys put together.
Yeah.
So Javier and Brenda put together a Que Pasa festival. It's held in Lafreniere Park, right?
Yes.
Is that the name of it? In
Yes.
Kenner?
Metairie.
Metairie, sorry. Every year, it's usually this huge affair. They've had some great acts come play. You want to talk a little bit about the history of that and Hispanic Heritage Month, right?
Yes. So the TV show Que Pasa New Orleans, which airs on Azteca TV, channel 22, which is over the air. It's a free channel over the air. You need one of those antennas that you plug into your TV to see it. Actually, we're on tonight at 11 o'clock at night. It's the show was created in 2010 with the intention of highlighting the arts, culture, entertainment in the New Orleans area. It's a weekly show. And at that time, we were trying to find a way of growing the show, but at the same time celebrating our heritage. Because something we have found out is that a lot of younger families are not promoting the culture as much as we'd like to see it. So we're losing a lot of young people to, they're not interested anymore. They're not showing the pride. So we wanted to create something to bring that back, that sense of pride of Latino culture. So we decided to create a festival called Que Pasa, a play on the name of Que Pasa New Orleans, because it's a brand, and to celebrate it in October during Hispanic Heritage Month, because as you know, nationally, Hispanic Heritage Month is recognized from September 15th through October 15th, 30 days of celebration. So we created this festival, Que Pasa Fest, and our first one was in 2011. It was a one-day outdoor festival, but we had led up to that day the week prior with different events, with just folkloric dance, acknowledgement, also cinema acknowledgement, different components. And that first year, our outdoor festival, maybe 1,000 people came to it, and we had food and we had live music. It's a free festival, and all you have to do is support it by buying your food and drink and listening, and live music. I mean, everything in New Orleans is celebrated with a festival. So we wanted to add our particular festival to that growing part of our uniqueness. And this year would have been our 10th festival. But of course, we had to cancel because of COVID-19. But we have been able to grow this festival to 10,000, 12,000 people in Lafreniere Park. So as Carolina said, we have brought some phenomenal international artists. Luis Enrique from Nicaragua. We have brought La Sonora Dinamita from Colombia. We have brought a lot of groups from Honduras, because remember, our largest group is from Honduras, and we want to always acknowledge that group of people. So we've brought Banda Blanca. We've brought, let's see, who else? We've had people, artists from Mexico. We've had mariachis. I mean, you name it, we've had it. And actually, if you go to our website where the different digital copies of the paper, where it's at, if you look at last month's issue, which would be October's issue, I did a reflection, like the centerpiece of the paper is dedicated all to the 9 festivals. So we have created official posters for them. They're all there. We've created all these different, the food booths. We've had over 20 food booths representing a lot of our Latin American countries. So they're listed there. I've listed every single local Latin artist that has performed at our festivals, which I was just amazed, because you don't think about these things until you actually sit down and you go through the lists. And of course, I named all of the international artists that have performed at our festival. So if you go back and look at that issue, it tells the story of Que Pasa. But we hope to be back next year. And it would be again in October. It would actually be the second weekend of October at Lafreniere Park. It's a free festival. And that's what we do. We celebrate our heritage with this wonderful event.
That's great. And you just recently extended the reach of this paper to Lake Charles,
Yes,
Louisiana,
with this issue.
and with this issue. And what, I mean, how did you come, that decision was made in what way? Like what made you do that?
Okay, actually, at the beginning of this year, we found out that Lake Charles had acquired a Telemundo affiliate. So now you can watch Telemundo. Lake Charles has its own affiliate. It has nothing to do with the New Orleans affiliate. It's a different owner, but he's got the rights to it for Lake Charles. And so we I got in touch with the manager there, and I asked him why. I mean, what made him want to acquire a Telemundo affiliate? He said the Latino community is growing in Lake Charles, and it's growing very quickly because of the refineries. So what I've done, a little bit of the research that I've done is that you have a lot of Venezuelans that are moving to the area because they have that background in refinery and the oil business. And you have a lot of people, the casinos that are coming up with, building hotels and casinos in that area, they're recruiting in Puerto Rico. So a lot of people are moving from Puerto Rico to come work at these casinos in the Lake Charles area. So those are your larger populations right now, the Venezuelans and the Puerto Ricans. So, but this was at the beginning of the year. With the aftermath of these two hurricanes that have hit the area, I see what's going to happen is what happened here after Katrina. You have a lot of people moving in from Texas to rebuild, and a lot of these people don't even have to actually move into the area right now. They're just commuting because it's so close. They're about an hour away, depending on what part of Texas they live in, and they're working there. And then right now, there has been no Latino print in Lake Charles. So, we said, let's start bringing the paper over there because that community is going to explode. The show's already on. We started airing our show, Que Pasa New Orleans, at the beginning of this year on Telemundo in Lake Charles. So this is just like the complement now with the paper. So we got lucky with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I had no idea that was going on in Lake Charles, by the way.
I didn't either.
Any other questions for Brenda? Brenda, one of the things, and this is, we've been talking about media this week, and actually I'm going to send you a link. CUNY up in New York City has a link. They're doing a project of documenting media, like Latinx and Latino media, and Que Pasa is not on there, right? But the last time they published it was in 2019, so maybe it hasn't reached there yet, but they didn't notice it. But what are the challenges, right? Like when we talk about print media, which is a dying form, almost practically. So what, I mean, you guys have now you have this digitally, but so what are some of the challenges to having this paper and to and I think it's supporting this community that is so diverse, right? Like you have a community that has so many different groups. And one of the ways you've done it is doing it by English and Spanish, which is really important. But what else what are these challenges? Tell us a little bit about what you think the challenges are.
Some of the challenges is just the words that we use when we write the articles too, because we're reaching out to different communities. And sometimes one word may be very offensive to another Latino community, another group. So I have to be really, really careful when we're translating the articles to not offend anybody by the words that we choose. You have to kind of write very generically. Spanish, I think you understand what I mean by that. Just have to be very, almost like watching the news, and almost like I don't want people to be able to tell where I'm from by reading my article, because of just by the way I address certain situations or say things or want to the ideas that I want to transmit. So that's a challenge. Also, what we have found is that, yes, the print medium is a dying medium, but in New Orleans, for some reason, we're very traditional and very conservative compared to other cities. So we're a little behind still compared to, like I said before, Miami, Dallas, New York. And people still enjoy walking out of the supermarket or walking out of a coffee shop with a paper in their hand. They like to hold that paper and read it versus, maybe just reading it on a smartphone or on the web. I mean, of course, granted, yeah, there are people that are reading it because we can tell, we've had all these, by the hits on the analytics on our website, they're reading it. But they still like to walk out with a paper in their hands. We know that's going to eventually probably go away, but we still enjoy printing, and it still works. Like I said, we'll go look at the stands, and the paper's gone, so people are picking it up. When we start seeing the stacks of papers when you go back the following month, and we're like, okay, no one's picking it up anymore, we'll reconsider and look at that and see what changes need to be made.
Any other questions for Brenda? All right, Brenda, I think that's it. Thank you very much for your time, for sharing your expertise, telling us a little bit about media, and this great contribution to this community, right? That's, I mean, relatively speaking, it's small if we talk about other cities, but it continues to grow, and it's historic as well, right? Like, we're talking about a community that's been here as long as the city's been here, basically.
Definitely. Yeah. And you might not know this, but a lot of people ask me, how did the Honduran community get to be the strongest one? And it was because of the banana industry. Back in the 40s, the banana fruit companies, the ports, La Ceiba and New Orleans, a lot of people traveled back and forth with the banana products. So at the time, it was also easy to decide, I'd like to live in New Orleans. Let me apply for my green card or my residency. And a lot of people did that. So they settled here. They enjoy the weather. They enjoy the proximity. It's so close. They enjoy the similarities. New Orleans is so small compared to other cities. So they enjoy that too. And that's why the Honduran community is the largest, because of the banana industry.
And, the airport used to have direct flights to, I remember my sister lives in Guatemala. We used to fly directly to Guatemala City from New Orleans. Like, we used to have there used to be lots of direct flights to Central America. Aviateca, exactly. Those have gone away. That's been that was 30 years ago, but there used to be direct flights to, exactly. To Nicaragua, to Mexico, all those places.
There was such, back in the 70s, this was in the 70s, it was such New Orleans was probably the most important port, when it came to tourism.
Right.
Then we lost it to Miami, but like you said, that's why it was the New Orleans International Airport, because it was a true international airport. They had flights to all of Central America, El Salvador through Taca, Aviateca was Guatemala, Sasa was Honduras.
Yeah.
So you had all that, and then they tried again. Eventually after Katrina, Taca left, never came back. Then they tried again with, I think it was Aeromexico.
Right.
Trying to bring the direct flights back to Mexico, and then that failed. And then right before Katrina, I'm sorry, right before the pandemic, Spirit Airlines had signed on to having direct flights to Honduras, San Pedro Sula, and that never came to fruition. Right. So I hopefully we'll be able to get back to international flights to Latin America. Oh, well, we had Copa Airlines,
right?
But they left after the pandemic too.
Oh, they did. Okay, because that was to Panama, right?
Right. That was the hub that you would fly to Panama, and from Panama you can connect all over the world. All of Latin America, and it was working. It was a very strong airline, and people enjoyed flying it. It was, they were doing really well, and then COVID hit, and they left. So now it's, you can still get to Latin America. You just have to go all over the place before you land there.
Exactly.
But we'd love to have direct flights again, and hopefully that's something that can happen again in the near future.
I do too. I hope so too. Okay, so thank you very much, Brenda, for your time. Thank y'all for being a part of this. For my students, I'll see y'all tomorrow. Have a great evening. And for those that came from the community, thank you very much.
Muchas gracias. Feliz noche.
A ti, Brenda.
Gracias a ustedes. Buenas noches.
That was great, Brenda. Thank you very much. I've learned. I have so many questions for you. That's why I was like, I let other people talk, but I've got so many questions for you on this.
That's okay. Tell me.
no, I just think it's just super interesting, the media aspects, and especially because this week, that's all we've been talking. That's what we've been talking about in the class, and representations. And I should have asked you about that, like the representation, like how do y'all? And I don't know why I didn't ask you this, but the kind of we've talked a lot about media representation of the Latinx community, and normally how it's stereotypes and it's negative. And so I was wondering, like, how do y'all? I mean, do you take that? I'm sure you take that into consideration. That's a lot to take into consideration, though. Like, you are representing a community through your paper.
Right.
So are there stories that you will not write about?
Yeah. We focus on art, culture, and entertainment. So we don't want to write about anything that's happening in the news, issues like immigration or things like that, just because other papers are already doing it. Jambalaya News is doing that. And Viva Nola, she's got a magazine, Ana Maria. So we've moved away from that. But right now with Lake Charles, starting in Lake Charles and with the hurricane, that's something that we probably, wouldn't have covered. But it was so important just because we realized, okay, there is a Latino community there. And we have to find a way to tie it in with art, culture, and entertainment. So we did that. Right now,
I saw that in the pages, like you acknowledged, you're like, Latinos are rebuilding, right? And I saw that you acknowledged that in the paper and had an article on that. And you're right. I mean, you got to bring them in, right? You got to be like, hey, shout out to Lake Charles and what's going on, right?
Right. And then my December issue, I'm doing a story on this couple who was already giving to the community before the pandemic, continue to give back to the community even more through the pandemic. And now, because the wife is from Honduras, now they've taken it a step higher and are now helping with these two hurricanes that have hit Central America. So they're carrying their help not only locally, but now, internationally with giving back to Honduras and Nicaragua. So so the story just focuses on giving at this time of need, not only to the local community, but to extending it to her community.
So you guys make connections to Latin America in that way, right? Like this is a community, Spanish-speaking community that still has transatlantic ties, still goes there, and it's very important for them to
That's what we're and there we always want to write stories that are positive. Trying to find a link between New Orleans, the culture, the art culture, the music culture. And like, for example, I'll give you the perfect example. I got an email from someone that said, would you accept an article on health, on exercise? And so my answer was, send it to me. I'd love it. But if you can tie it in with something with dance.
Right.
With Zumba or Latin Zumba or Latin yoga or just something with movement, with dance or whatever, it would just tie in perfectly with what this paper is about. Right. So, there are ways to do it. And that's the challenge, but it's fun, and I always like to highlight people in the community that maybe people don't know about. Right. We know a lot about other people, they're always popping up because they're always contributing, and that's fine. They're leaders in the community, but I know there's other people out there that no one knows about and that they should.
Right. Exactly. Absolutely.
So I like to find, that's why you see that little girl, Latina 504, she's already doing something on her own and people didn't even know that she was giving back to the community, by creating her little brand and making young people proud of who, where they come from, because that's the generation we're losing.
Right. Exactly. Well, I think, especially I think in New Orleans, right? I think it's, part of it is that the community is not that big. So, I mean, I grew up in a city in South Georgia where there was only like 20, Hispanic Latino families, period, right? So I didn't, and in my house it was very strong, but when you don't see yourself or your culture reflected outside of your house, it's hard to get excited about it, right? Exactly. It's hard to, and that's why I think Que Pasa, the festival, was really important. Like, it's like visibility, right? It's all about visibility and making them realize,
Yeah. And that's been a challenge. Putting the festival on has been a challenge because every year it gets bigger and bigger. And so there's more expenses. And, you know, we only work with the money that we are able to get through grants and sponsorships.
Right.
You know, all of our work is volunteer work. We don't get paid for that, but we enjoy putting it together and then watching it just come to fruition. You know, people think we're crazy, and so do we, because it's like, oh my gosh, what are we doing here?
I mean, I think the last one I went to was, it's been a few years, right? I think because sometimes I'm out of town that weekend because it's our spring fall break. So I'm either in Miami, sometimes I'm in Cuba at a theater festival. But the last one I went to was huge. I went on a Saturday. There were so many people there. It was like the best day ever there, the fall day. A bunch of Latin American students from Tulane were there. We were hanging out. It was absolutely beautiful. It was wonderful.
Yeah, we missed it this year. It's But I was like, okay, we needed a break too.
Right. No, absolutely. Yes. You need a breather, regroup. Exactly.
So next year will be bigger and better because we've got that energy.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's been a challenge because when we try to sell it, when we try to go out there to recruit, you know, to get grants or sponsorships or money, people are still asking, you know, it's almost like they don't believe in it. And it's like, guys, this is the 9th festival. Look at the numbers. Look at, you know.
Exactly. So
we have some loyal sponsors that never, you know, that every year contribute, and we're so thankful for them. Atmos Gas, for example, there's somebody on board every year that they believe in us, and you know they help by giving us a nice grant. But yeah, but we don't want to let it go, you know, because we know that this is important, and people already know. They're like, hey, when's Que Pasa? When's Que Pasa Fest?
Absolutely. Great.
So, yeah.
All right, Brenda, thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Carolina. Thank you.
Cuídate mucho, and we'll be in touch. We'll be in touch, hopefully.
Whatever I can do for you, help you, whatever, just let me know. I'll be glad to.
Great. Fantastic. Okay, ciao.
Right. Bye-bye. Adios. Bye-bye.